When you think of Henry Ford, what comes to mind? The Model T, right? The assembly line. We see him as this industrial titan who basically put America on wheels. But what if I told you that behind all that machinery, there was a man with a really deep and honestly surprising personal philosophy? A set of beliefs that he saw as the real engine of his success. So, was that it? Was it just gears and steel and some brilliant business strategy? Or was there something else going on? A kind of hidden power that Ford himself believed was the true secret to everything he built. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on a side of Henry Ford that you have probably never heard before. Now, how we know all this comes from a really fascinating source. It's a rare book from 1929 that actually documents this intimate, in-depth conversation between Ford and a writer named Ralph Waldo Trine. And it's right there, in his own words, that this famous industrialist pulls back the curtain on his mystical side and the metaphysical beliefs that pretty much shaped his entire world. All right, let's dive right into the deep end because this is where it gets really mind-bending. Ford believed in a whole unseen universe, a reality that operated on principles that go way, way beyond simple mechanics. See, for Ford, the big idea was that there's no real separation between things. He saw the spiritual world and the material world as, like, two sides of the same coin. The universe wasn't split up. It was all just one unified substance, and we are a part of that. And this leads to one of his most fascinating ideas, something he called little entities. He had this belief that we are constantly attracting these invisible life forces that are literally building our reality for us, and they're guided by our thoughts and our work. So what are these invisible lives? Basically, Ford saw them as the spiritual stuff of achievement. By really focusing your mind and your actions on a goal, you are basically sending out a signal, calling for these little entities to come and help you build it into reality. And this is the absolute core of his belief system. Your thoughts aren't just thoughts. They're tangible forces. They have real substance. They are the architects of your life, attracting the actual building blocks of the universe to give your vision a physical form. And just when you think it can't get any more out there, yep, Ford was also a huge believer in reincarnation. He didn't see life as just a one-shot deal. For him, it was this continuous cycle of learning and growing and gathering experience over many, many lifetimes. So how did he explain genius? People like inventors or prophets. It wasn't magic. In his view, they were just older souls. They'd simply lived more lives and stored up more knowledge. What we call intuition was, to him, just hard-won experience bleeding through from a past life. Okay, so you've got this wild, abstract philosophy. How in the world does that translate into building one of the biggest companies on Earth? Let's take a look at how these beliefs actually fueled his real-world success. Well, for Ford, the secret wasn't really a secret at all. There was no magic pill. It was all about deciding what you wanted to do, preparing like crazy, and then just applying yourself with this relentless focus. It was about getting ready and then staying at it. And you can really hear his philosophy at work in this advice. Every single task, no matter how small, was a chance to improve yourself. By doing your best work, you weren't just building a car or whatever, you were building your own character. You were performing a metaphysical act, attracting those little entities that create success. Now, this whole inner-focused mindset had a huge impact on how he ran his business. He wasn't chasing wealth for its own sake. He actually saw it as just a side effect of something way more important. His number one rule, the cornerstone of everything, was this: service comes first, before profit, before production, before anything else. He truly believed that a business just could not succeed unless its main motivation was to serve the public. And it wasn't just a vague idea. He broke it down into the super simple but powerful three-step formula. First, figure out what people actually need. Second, build the absolute best product you can to meet that need. And third, make sure the customer gets more value than they paid for. That's why the Model T was so valuable and so cheap. It was this philosophy in action. This quote just captures his whole view on money perfectly. It's not the prize, it's just the fuel. It's the energy you need to build more, create more, and most importantly, serve more. Money was just a tool to get things done, and the thing to get done was always greater service. And Ford didn't just stop with cars and business. He applied this same hands-on practical philosophy to his ideas about education. And let's just say he was not a fan of the traditional school system. He saw this massive gap between just knowing a bunch of facts and actually knowing how to think. For him, real education wasn't about memorizing dates and figures. It was about getting your hands dirty, solving real problems, and learning through direct, hands-on experience. So, what was his solution? He championed trade schools, like the Henry Ford Trade School he founded. They were designed to bridge that gap between the classroom and the real world. It was a place where students could learn a skill by actually practicing it. This was education for life, not just for a test. All right, so let's bring this all home and look at how he applied these ideas to his own life, to the machine that he believed was the most important one of all, his own body. He literally saw the human body as a machine, an engine, really. And just like any car, he believed it needed the right maintenance to get good mileage. He felt that most sickness was totally preventable, and it usually came down to how you fueled and cared for the machine that was carrying your soul through this particular life. So, what were his rules for keeping that machine running smoothly? Well, they were actually pretty simple, practical habits. Regular exercise, connecting with nature, eating a clean diet. But just as important was mental downtime, finding a quiet place to let the mind work, and to connect with those deeper forces he believed in. So, in the end, you can see how all these different ideas, from those invisible entities to the power of service, they all connected. For Ford, beliefs like reincarnation weren't just some abstract fantasy. They were practical tools, a framework that explained the world and gave purpose to everything he did. And that leaves us with this really fascinating question, doesn't it? The man who put the entire world on wheels also believed our thoughts could literally attract invisible forces to build our reality. So was he a hard-nosed, pragmatic industrialist, a spiritual mystic? Or was the fusion of those two things the real secret to his power? That's something to think about.